Welcome to an ADD Woman podcast. I'm your host, Lacey Estelle, writer of all things about ADHD parenting and being an ADHD mother on Mothering the Storm with Lacey Estelle at laceyestelle.com. Here on an ADD Woman podcast, we're going to switch it up and talk about all things to do with ADHD as an adult woman and how we deal with it. Now you might be thinking, ADHD, women don't really have that. Actually, we do. We've all just been doing such a great job for years of masking it. So let's dive in. Hi, it's Lacey Estelle from An ADD Woman podcast. And I want to ask you a question. Do you ever just wish someone could make decisions for you so you didn't have to worry about the effort of making decisions? Maybe you question if you'll ever get your life together or if you'll ever decide what you want to be when you grow up, and you're just feeling lost. Listen, whether you're a woman with diagnosed ADHD, a woman who suspects she may have ADHD, or just a woman who recognizes herself in the struggles I share on this podcast, I want to help. Through my mentorship, I want you to learn to trust yourself again by helping you discern God's desires for your life. How will we do that? By going back to the basics of being a Christian woman, what the gospel means for each of us, and how to apply it to our lives daily. But Lacey, how will that help my ADHD? Because once you have a good foundational understanding of who you are and what your value is, where it comes from and why, you'll then be able to figure out the next right step in your path to coping with your ADHD struggles. Whether that be practical ways of organizing your efforts, seeking therapy, continued coaching by me, or a formal diagnosis and medical intervention, it all begins at the source of all life, Jesus Christ. Normally, these mentored sessions are $99 per hour, but because I want more women to recognize their true potential, I'm going to open the doors to this mentored membership for 1 month starting in July for only $15. You'll get locked in to $15 per month for an entire year. If you're trying to do the math in your head as to what that equals, it's $180. So less than the full price of 2 whole sessions with me, you'll get an entire year of mentorship. And you're probably thinking, okay, Lacey, but why are you doing this? And on top of that, why should we decide to work with you? Because I've been where you've been. Some days, I still know what it's like to ask myself questions like, am I really worth this? Can I really talk about this? Can I actually make a difference? And I'm here to tell you the answer is yes. And the answer is also yes to those questions for you. Yes, you can find a life you enjoy and feel comfortable with. And yes, you can find ways to manage your time, your life, your projects, your relationships, and your career. And yes, you can love Jesus while doing all of this. This mentorship will be slightly different than my regular one-on-ones. It will be group sessions monthly, with a one-on-one with each and every member every 3 months for the first year instead of every month. But if you need more, you can ask for more, and I will be there. This isn't about me building a business or trying to gain a following. This is about you and your needs and the things you message me asking about. I want to help you build you. So sign up. The day this podcast goes live, the door is open to this mentorship. You can find the link in the bottom, and it will only be this price for a short amount of time. So don't miss out. I cannot wait to see you there. Warning. This podcast episode will discuss domestic violence in depth and may be triggering for those who have experienced domestic violence. If you believe you could be a domestic violence victim, please reach out to your domestic violence hotline. It's free, anonymous, and helpful. If you live in the United States, you can call 1-800-799-7233. This is available in English, Spanish, and 200 plus other languages. If you believe your life is in danger, please call 911 or your local authorities. Hey guys, it's Lacey Estelle with An ADD Woman. This is episode 17. Wow, how did we get to 17 so fast? So this is part 2 of ADHD and toxic relationship patterns, and I'm so excited to talk to you guys about this because it's needed. It's needed so badly, and I hate that it's actually needed that badly, but I'm also so grateful that you're willing to listen, especially if you're listening to these episodes thinking, I think I might need this because I may be experiencing this. Today, I want us to talk about something I didn't talk about in the first part, and that is how do we recognize that we're getting into a possibly toxic relationship before the relationship gets serious? How do we do that? How do we qualify that? What do we look for? And what can we do to make sure that we don't end up in these situations? Let's get into it. So, in episode 1 of ADHD and toxic relationship patterns, we kind of laid out a foundational understanding of my theory. Now, not to say that somebody else who has, way more letters after their name hasn't coined that theory already. It could be. I haven't read about it, but I do believe strongly that a lot of women who have ADHD get caught in toxic relationship patterns because of our dopamine deficit. Now, if you're not familiar, dopamine is definitely that feel-good hormone that makes you feel elated and excited. And it is an abundant boost that we get in the beginning of brand new relationships. When you're entering into toxic relationships and you are always operating at a deficit of that dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin combination, which are all the very good feel-good hormones, and you go and get into a toxic relationships, well, honestly, any relationship, a lot of times in the beginning, you're going to feel that big boost of excitement and a little bit of adrenaline, and your heart's pounding and you get the butterflies and all those things, right? And you feel like you're on top of the world. Well, when it's a toxic relationship, we established in the last episode that those relationships also mean that the person generally is love bombing you. And what is love bombing? So love bombing is when somebody preemptively, basically douses desired, partner in all sorts of overly abundant and overly kind of forceful, even loving infatuation actions. Now, that might be having flowers delivered to your work just after your first date, or that could be, texting you every single day and saying, good morning, beautiful. If you're a woman, these are the types of things that I've experienced. Men that started to kind of have red flags to me. You may see in the beginning, they say stuff like, I just care about you so much, or, I feel like I've known you forever. And really, they've only known you for like 5 days. And if you're the type of woman like me that for a long time you struggled with your own value and your own self-worth, and maybe you didn't exactly know where that was coming from or where that does come from, hearing these things from somebody that you feel is attractive in any way, or also just in general, maybe they have a lot of success that you don't necessarily have. For me, I was a single mom for a lot of years, and I was a young single mom. So, I was 21, 22 when a lot of my friends were, barely even considering getting married. Okay. I had already had 2 children. So my body was different than my peers, and my financial situation was not very good. And so anytime that I would come across, a guy who was interested in me, I felt like, oh my gosh, he's willing to take on this charity case of me, and maybe he really cares about me. And if they were toxic and they love bombed me in the beginning, I thought that was a sure sign that they really were a great guy. Come to find out, that's actually the exact opposite. So what are the red flags we can look for when we meet somebody new, when we are going on a date? How can we discern whether or not this person, has concept of healthy boundaries in relationships and recognizes what type of relationship we're required? So first things first, I want you to understand that just because you have ADHD, okay, just because you struggle with getting your laundry done, or, your house may be messier than most houses, or things along those lines. If you're a single person, the person you should be seeking should be somebody that will work with you as a teammate, not somebody that's going to work with you like a coach. It's not the same thing. You don't need a coach. You are an adult woman, I would imagine. Now, when I say coach, you don't need a coach in your relationship. Maybe you need a coach, like in the mentorship that I mentioned in the beginning of this episode, but you don't necessarily need a coach in your relationship. You don't need your partner to coach you on how to live your life, okay? You are capable of making your own choices. Now, some of those choices might not be the best decisions, but being with somebody should not feel like you're excited for them to, take you on. And I would say to you that if you feel that way at all with anybody that you're with, that like you just feel so lucky that they're even giving you any attention, you're not ready for a relationship. And I know that that sucks. I know that that sucks so bad. And I know that even me saying that does not necessarily mean you're going to listen to me. You may still decide to look for a relationship just because you're lonely, or you think that nobody will ever want you because of all of the things you have going on, or that if you wait, later on down the line, people will be past the point that they're at right now where they're willing to take a risk on somebody different or somebody in different circumstances or somebody who's messy, who doesn't have their stuff together. And I just want to tell you, all those things that you tell yourself, they're just not true. There's always, and this sounds so bad, okay? I don't want you to think that I'm thinking like, I guess the simple way to put it is there are lots of fish in the sea. And it's funny because you see people say, yeah, but not my fish. Don't touch my fish. And that's totally true. Me and my husband, there is lots of fish in the sea, but he is my fish. But if you're feeling to yourself like you're just going to be lucky that somebody gives you some attention because you just don't know if you're worthy of any attention, don't get in a relationship right now. You'll be blinded easily. You'll be blinded by any attention someone gives you. And that's really not love, not real love. So let's define what real love actually looks like. Real love is service. John 15:13 says, greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. Now, I'm reading from the KJV. Let me go to the New Living Translation, just so that it's easier to understand. And the New Living Translation says, there is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. So, love is servitude. And in our culture today, that sounds alien. You mean to tell me as a woman I'm supposed to serve my man? That sounds, definitely not feminist. But understand something, that the person that you choose to be with should enter into your relationship knowing and understanding that they're there to serve you as well. It's not just a one-way street. You are not supposed to be somebody's maid. You are supposed to be somebody's teammate. You are supposed to be somebody's helper. So that is real love. Real love is serving the other person because you love them so much that you will deny yourself and serve them. Not denying yourself in a way that means that you deny your own healthy boundaries. That's not the same thing. It simply means that if I am not crazy about doing laundry, but I know that my husband needs help with the laundry, I help him do the laundry. That is not the same thing as, again, a trigger point for me, as my ex-husband who used to tell me that if I didn't have sexual relations with him, that I must be cheating on him or I must not love him. And this is after he would berate me and belittle me and make me feel very small and insult me. So I would lay there in bed and allow for him to have sex with me, even though I did not really truly consent to it. And I would just cry because I thought that that was my duty. That's not true. And that's not the definition of service in love. It's not. So loving someone means that you're willing to say, if my comfort level, okay, so loving somebody in that situation would have been my husband loving me enough to say, I understand that our relationship isn't very good right now and we have some things we need to work out. I'm not going to force myself on you through coercion because I know that there's something broken in us and we need to fix that first for you to feel comfortable with that. That would have been a healthy way of dealing with the problems we were dealing with. But I digress. So now that we've kind of established, and that's a very brief understanding of what love is, let's get into what sort of red flags you can right away see. Now, first and foremost, on a first date, people are always putting their best foot forward. You're going to be doing the same thing as the person that you're with. So it's not always going to be right away easy to see the things that they're not trying to show you. Just the same as they're going to have a hard time seeing the things that you're not trying to show them. And what I also find with a lot of ADHD women is we're the type of people that we lay it right all out there. Like we go on a first date and we're like, oh, by the way, I'm really insecure about my thighs and I really don't like my toenails. And so if that's something that bothers you, probably shouldn't date me. And why do we do this? I think we do it because we want to just get the rejection out of the way. And so we figure if you're going to reject me for something vain like that, just do it now. And we end up giving away kind of all of the mystery of being a woman, right? Like it's not all about mystery, but I do know that, people say dating and relationship coaches say, oh, guys like the chase. Well, it's not so much that they like the chase, but I think that they like the idea that they can ask questions and they can get to know you on the level that they want to get to know you on. So you don't have to put everything out there just because you want to preemptively be rejected before you could get hurt. So just zip your lips and listen. And what are you listening for? You want to be listening to hear how is their relationship with their mother? More so also, what is their relationship like with their father? What is their relationship with God? And what is their relationship with their previous people that they've been in relationships with, especially long term? Okay. You're going to ask them questions about their relationship and the nature of their relationship with those people in their lives. And then you need to listen carefully. Do they criticize those people? Do they talk poorly about them? On the opposite side of things, do they talk extremely highly of them? If they have a very glorified ideation of their mother, that could be a red flag. They may constantly be in a position of wanting her approval, which would mean that they may constantly try to mold you to her approval. What you're looking for is confidence in themselves. And the only way to truly have confidence in your interpersonal relationships, regardless of your differences, is having confidence in yourself. So you want to make sure that the person that you're seeing or that you're considering dating has good confidence in themselves. And they'll be able to tell you that by how they explain to you their relationships work with each of those people in their lives. They'll be able to tell you the differences that they may have with that person, how they don't really allow for those differences to define that part of their relationship, and how they just kind of overlook those things because everybody's an adult and you can have differences of opinion about things or whatnot, and you can find ways to work around those things in those relationships. So that would be a green flag. I would say that could be okay to say, okay, let's go on a second date. Now, here's what I would think you should try to do between the second and third date. Not before the second date, but between the second and third date. At this point, you've probably established a good rapport with each other. You're probably responding on a regular basis. Depending on how far apart your first and second date were, you're probably starting to think, okay, maybe I really like this person. We have a lot in common. We seem to have the same goals. I want for when they ask you if you want to go do something, regardless of the time that you have available, I want you to come up with a reason to say no. Why is this? This is called the no test. And I've heard of this. I did not coin this. This is not my idea. I've heard of this from somebody else and I cannot remember who they were. And I apologize for that. But the no test is a simple way to see how they react to the idea that you would tell them no. Do they guilt trip you? Do they make you feel bad? Do they then insist how much they'll miss you? How they really wish you had more time for them? Do they then start to kind of flip the switch and say that maybe you're too busy for them and that you don't have enough time to get to know them? When really, that's not the case at all. If they start to kind of pull on your emotions just because you simply say, sorry, this Friday I really can't, I have other things I need to do. First of all, it's not a lie to say that you have other things you need to do. We can always find things we need to do, right? I mean, there is always something to be done. That's not a lie. Second, you should be in a relationship where you are just as able to tell the person yes as you are just as able to tell the person no. No, I'm not comfortable with that. No, I'm sorry. I don't really want to go. Now, does that mean like in my marriage that every time I tell my husband, no, I don't really want to go to that we don't go? No, that's not the case. There is a healthy compromise with that. And the same thing goes for my husband. When my husband says, I really don't want to attend that, I'll say, okay, well, like how much do you not want to attend it? And if that's the case, then are you okay with me going by myself? Because it's really, really important to me. And then sometimes he'll say, okay, I'll forego this one and I'll come with you. And other times he's like, you know what, you can just go on your own if you want to go. And I'll just stay home. So use the no test and see how he reacts. Here's the thing. When you do things like this, when you use the no test or when you listen for these red or green flags, You have to be willing to tell yourself the truth about this person. I went from being in a very abusive situation where the person was extremely volatile, very scary. There were lots of times where I wanted to call the police, or I did call the police. Lots of times where I was scared, not just for my life, but scared to go home, scared to stand up for myself. Fear was the only thing that ran rampant in that relationship. And when I left that relationship, I immediately got, I can't say immediately, but within a few months, I started a new relationship with somebody who was the total opposite, which is generally what a lot of women in this situation do. They end up finding somebody who is the exact opposite of the violent person that they were with in the past. But the thing is the opposite of the violent person that I was with in the past still wasn't the right person for me. And there were red flags in the beginning of that relationship that it wouldn't work out. Not necessarily that they were going to be abusive, but just that the relationship itself probably wouldn't pan out in the end. But I just wasn't willing. I wasn't willing to look at them. Why? Because I was lonely and I wanted somebody to accept me. And again, it comes back to that self-confidence piece where, I had a fear that if I said no to this person who at the time was doing well for themselves and they were fun, they were so much fun, and they made it fun to be with them, then I was just never going to be happy. That's just never going to work, right? So fun relationships don't always equal responsible relationships either. But we're trying to specifically figuring out whether or not the person that you're with or that you're considering being with is toxic or could be abusive. I mean, let's just call it what it is. Toxic people, toxic relationships, people always like to say, oh, well, it was just a toxic relationship, because a lot of times people don't want to blame. They will say, oh, well, it was just bad for both of us. We were both toxic to each other. First of all, in truly abusive relationships, one person is abusive and the other person is reactive. Now, sometimes that reactive behavior can seem abusive as well. And the reason for that is if you back a dog into a corner, he's going to bite you. If you're an abuse victim and you continue to be backed into a corner, you are going to lash out because you are in fear of either your life, or you're in fear of your children's lives, or you're just in fear of your safety in general being lost. One person is abusive and one person is reactive. Sometimes the person that is reactive can be just as reactive in abuse as the person who is exhibiting the abuse. That happens, and then that does create a circular pattern. I can say there were times that I started to do things in my previous marriage that I was like, this is not me. Why am I doing this? But I was motivated by the fact that I felt like I had very little or no control at all over any decisions I was able to make. Not even having autonomy of my body in my marriage made me feel like the only thing I could do to have a little piece of power would be things like hiding things from my ex-husband that I knew he would look for, and it would frustrate him to have to look for them. So I'd hide them because it would make me feel somewhat alive just to be able to watch him struggle to find things. Is that good or part of a healthy relationship? Absolutely not. I don't make excuses for it. But what I'm saying is you may find yourself, if you are in an abusive relationship, a lot of times your abuser will try to tell you, oh, well, you abuse me too. And they'll point at some of the things you do reactively to the abuse that they exhibit on you. That is not the same as being abusive in the first place. It's not. And abusers use that paradigm to continue to keep their victims stuck and confused more than anything. So within the first 2 or 3 dates, if the guy you're with or the person you're considering dating says something along the lines that, shoots up a red flag, you have to be willing to say, okay, this is a red flag to me. How many strikes before I call them out? Probably shouldn't be 3, because I'll be honest with you. 1 red flag is probably 1 red flag too many. If they show you that sign right off the bat, if you do the no test on them and they immediately start to make you feel guilty. Oh, I feel like I've barely seen you all week, or we just have barely talked, and what are you doing? Are you going on a date with somebody else? Or, anything along those lines. Red flag, bam, gone. And the reason I tell you that is because hopefully at this point, and you're getting to know them, you haven't gotten in the bedroom. And as a Christian woman, probably most people who are listening to this are probably thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe she's even going to mention the bedroom, or she's even going to mention sex before marriage. Well, first of all, I live in this modern age and I've had sex before marriage. And here's what I can tell you it did. One, it blinded me. It blinded me every single time. I don't care how much our society wants to tell us that girls can act just like men when it comes to sex and it can just be an animalistic reaction. It's not. It's not for us. That's not how God designed for it to be. And it's just not the case. I don't wish that it was different. I wish I would have known better sooner because I didn't realize what sex with people who I didn't love or who I didn't intend to spend the rest of my life with was actually stealing from me. The other thing, too, is not only does it blind you, it can create a misled or misperceived sense of intimacy and bondage with the person that you are having sex with before you have established whether or not you're actually compatible. Now, I know you might be thinking to yourself, Lacey, you sound so old school. I can't believe you would say that. We're Christians, but we're not saints. Okay, well, first of all, if you are a Christian, if you are a professing Christian, you are considered a saint. That's what the Bible calls you. You go from being a sinner to a saint. You are in the perseverance of the saints, okay? But second of all, if you live your life for society, how does anybody know you're a Christian? Do you live your life for God's standards or do you live your life for your standards? How much do you trust God to know what He did in our brains and in our bodies and how He created things and designed things? Now, I know this is a stumbling block for many. I know it is because it was a stumbling block for me. But I can tell you without a doubt, if you try hard to keep sexual activity out of your relationships before you have defined whether or not you and the person you're with or the person you're considering being with, in the very least, are actually compatible long term, you will do yourself a lot of favors so that you're not blinded by the intimacy that creates. And again, I know I sound so old school, but if you can do yourself that favor and stay out of the bedroom for probably at least at minimum 5 dates, you're going to see a lot more to them than what they'll just show you, 2 to 3 dates in, especially if they think that that's going to get them into your bedroom. Now, that does not mean that I condone having premarital sex. I am a Christian now, a confessing Christian, and I firmly believe that sex is made strictly for marriage, and I will stay on that stance for that. But I'm just saying, I understand who I'm talking to here, and I understand that the suggestions I'm giving to you, maybe you're not there yet in your walk, and that's okay. I think you'll get there, and I think the reasoning to get there is firm, and you just need to look for it and actually be willing to act on it. Is it easy? Nope, it's hard. When I got with my husband and we knew that we were in love, absolutely, and we were compatible long term, it was extremely difficult not to go past certain boundaries. But if we did, we had to repent for it and we had to keep moving towards pursuing Christ. So I will leave that at that. Here's the other thing too. Aside from using the no test, staying out of the bedroom, I did mention something about recognizing that fun relationships don't make for responsible ones. What do I mean by that? If the person that you are considering dating and you have ADHD, if all they ever want to do is go to the bar or go to parties and go be with friends, yeah, could mean that they're just like an extrovert, but it also could mean that that's who they are. Now, they'll tell you, because they want to put their best foot forward, oh, I only do this every once in a while. This isn't really me. It's just something I just thought you would enjoy going with me to try to do, right? But you need to recognize that that may be who they are. And if that's not who you are, or if you are looking for stability and security, that person may not be ready for a stable and secure relationship. And if they are going to be abusive towards you, it's going to be in ways where they may be passive aggressive. They may do things like, if you make them angry, instead of staying home to decipher, you guys' relationships or your relationship struggles, they may say, I'm out, I'm leaving, I'm going out with friends. And then they don't call you until 1 a.m. and they just leave you at home to wonder if they're safe, if they're okay, if they're cheating on you. That's not healthy. And that's abusive in its own right. The other thing I would say to ask them, find out how they view money. If you can find out how a man views money, if he views money as something that gives him his self-worth, run. And I know that I guess that probably sounds egotistical on my end. I don't know. Maybe it does. But a man who relies so heavily on his money to define his status or to define his self-worth or define his value is not a man who's actually confident. That's not a man who, and I know that as men, because they are ingrained by God to be our providers, a lot of them do have their self-worth intertwined with their relationship with money. I get it. But too much intertwinement in that aspect is a red flag. And if something were to happen, the circumstances were to change, or maybe you decide or you say, I want to be a stay-at-home mom, and that means that you're not going to make any money. Well, they may view their money as their money. And in that aspect, then you're looking at financial abuse. And one of the primary reasons that women who get stuck in abusive relationships get stuck in the first place or feel trapped is because their abuser generally has most control over the finances. And they have no way of getting money so that they can actually leave. I can say from experience, the times that I left my abuser, I left a lot of money on the table because I had no choice. The first time, because I left him several times, the first time I actually sold my vehicle behind his back so that I could get away. And the second time, I walked away from a huge insurance settlement so that I could just leave. So that's going to wrap up this episode. Hopefully you took a lot from it. Hopefully this helps you as you go out on dates or you start considering dating people and you're an ADHD Christian woman and you're starting to think, okay, I really need to do this differently, but I don't know exactly what to look for. These are the red flags to look for. And hopefully I threw in a few or enough green flags to make you think, okay, I could definitely maybe be with this person. In the next episode of this series specifically, I'm going to talk more about if you find yourself in these relationships, how to get out and how to actually recognize whether or not the person you're with, if the behavior that they're exhibiting over and over again is actually abuse, or if it is just some sort of mental struggle that they may need help with, or that they, may need to go to God with. So I look forward to hearing from you, and hopefully you'll join me for the next episode. I'll be talking to you guys soon. Have a great week. God bless.